Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 7 of the spring semester. This is English 1302. Just a quick reminder that your second quiz is coming up next week. That's going to be on Thursday, March the 6th, and it'll be over everything from week 8, week 7, week 6, and week 5. The reading assignments listed on your syllabus. Today, we're looking at a short video because I just want to talk to you real quickly about the two short stories. The first one called A and P, and then the one's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Okay, A and P, the first thing you need to know about this is it's called a coming of age story. It's different because the protagonist, Sammy, is older than you would think. Normally in our culture, people grow up in mid-teens, in barn burning. Sammy, the little kid Sardi, grows up at about the age of 9. But here, our protagonist is 19 years old, so he's been immature for quite a while. And that, of course, asks the question, well, does our society allow young people to stay less than fully developed for longer periods of time, or is this unique to this one character? I don't think it is, because at one point in the story, Sammy says that he and Stokesy are the same, other than the fact that Stokesy is 22, is married, and has 2 kids. So Stokesy apparently also is fairly immature. And yeah, Sammy is immature. Look at the way he describes customers, look at the way he describes his jobs, look at the way he describes his boss. Yes, he's an immature young man. And I'm not saying he fully matures the instant he walks out the door of the supermarket, but he does realize something which is going to help him to grow up. Okay, so this is set in a small town supermarket and called the A&P. And just like in most towns, when you go into a public place, even if you've just come from the beach, you put something on, a t-shirt, a wrap, something. So because the societal expectations are different in a public place like a supermarket than they would be at a place like the beach. But look at the first line of the short story. In walks these 3 girls wearing nothing but bathing suits. This story is set during the 1960s, which was, of course, the birth of the Cultural Revolution, sex, drugs, rock and roll, sexual freedom. Our culture was changing a lot. And so this story is kind of about that. But these 3 girls walk in. Sammy kind of watches them as they walk through the store. Then they get ready to check out. And Lingle, the store manager, who teaches Sunday school and all that, but still he doesn't miss much, he comes over to them and notices what he says to them. He says, and I got to tell you, I'm kind of on Lingle's side here. He simply says, he doesn't yell at them or browbeat them or anything. He simply says, this isn't the beach. Yeah, that's right. But this isn't the beach. Yeah, that's what he says to them. Now, what he implies there is that you're not dressed appropriately for the store, no shoes, no socks, no service, that sort of thing. But it embarrasses the girls. They're only there for the one thing. And kind of look at how Sammy mentally, in his fantasy, compares his home life to the girl's home life. And the girl, Queenie at least, is apparently rich. She does kind of look down on Lingle. But he feels like the girls were badly embarrassed, deeply humiliated. And so once they're finished, Sammy quits his job. Now, at this point, we need to ask ourselves, okay, is this the climax of the story? Does the story peak when Sammy says, I quit? I don't think so. That's one of the high points, but it's not the climax, because that happens just a few minutes later. Lingle gives him a chance to reconsider. What did you say? I said I quit. That's what I thought you said. Now, look at Sammy. It really helps to understand Sammy. He lives with his parents. His parents got him a job. His mom packs his lunch. She irons his shirts for him. He's heavily dependent upon his parents, and his parents are good friends with Lingle. So when the girls walk out the door, even though they've been mildly embarrassed or mildly put out, he says, I quit, as an act of rebellion, as an act of protest, their unnoticed, unsung hero. And what he's hoping is that he'll walk out the door and the girls will be there to say thank you. Well, of course, they're not there. Even if they heard him, they just kept on walking. But when he walks out the door and he sees the girls are gone, both an important part, he has an epiphany, a sudden revelation or understanding. And the revelation, now, don't put too much importance on the fact that he looks back and he sees Lingle in his slot, although there is some character transposition there. Don't pay too much attention to that. The important factor is that the girls are gone, that he has failed to impress the people he's trying to impress, and he realizes something. He feels his stomach kind of fall, his stomach kind of settles, and he realizes that the world is going to be hard hereafter. Parents aren't getting him any more jobs. Mother's not fixing his lunch or ironing his shirt. It's going to be a different life as a grown-up. And of course, as you know, life is different. But that's a nice little coming-of-age story. If I were going to interpret that one, I would definitely use feminist theory, because the girls in the story serve absolutely no purpose other than as sexual objects, literally sexual objects. Sammy even asked at one point in the story, now some of this is just slang from the 60s, but he asks, do these girls even have a mind? Do they think at all? Or is this just a little bee buzzing around inside a jar? Of course, he also talks bad about the customers and calls them sheep and pigs, and what do they do with all that pineapple juice? So anyway, it's a fun little story. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, the one that will, back to the feminist theory. Yeah, feminist theory holds that the role of women has been minimized, marginalized, and ignored, which we have a wonderful example of in A&P, because the girls are minimized. They are nothing but sexual objects. They have no point in the story other than to arouse Sammy's prurient interest. You can look that word up. And that's all they're there for. And so, yeah, as a feminist, if a feminist were to interpret the story, there was a lot there to work with. The story would be way different if the girls weren't used in that way. But I would want to get to the next story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. It's an interesting little story. Ursula K. Le Guin is best known for her science fiction writings. And the name of the town that she describes, Omelas, is just Salem, Oregon backwards, or Salem, O, backwards. And she describes it as a perfect utopia. A utopia is a fantasy place where everything is perfect and nothing goes wrong. And that's really what she describes here. Now, the whole thing is a big what if. What if this and this and this were true, and the Festival of Summer, and the music, and on some streets it's a slower pace, and some streets it's a faster pace, and the horses have only just a halter with no bit, which is the part that hurts the horse's mouth. And talks about the joy and the happiness of the citizens, and yeah, goes into great detail discussing the idyllic conditions in this fictional town, except for the child. There's a little child kept in a closet who is malnourished, mistreated, beaten, kicked, hardly ever fed, never gets to see the sunlight. And they all know that were this child to be released, all of their happiness, all of their beauty, all of their architecture, all of their science, even the weather and the crops would disappear upon the hour. So in some way, in some sense, there's some magical connection between the suffering, the ultimate suffering of this one child, and the complete beauty and happiness of the rest of the town. And yeah, there's lots of detail here. I encourage you to spend some time on the detail. But the question becomes, at the end of the story, we learn that there are some people, most people go and see this little child. Some are content just to hear about it, but some go, almost everyone goes and looks at it to actually see it. Some kick it. But some, once they've seen the child, or a few years later, leave. They leave this land of beauty and peace and sophistication and happiness, and they walk out and they just keep walking. Why? Why would you leave a utopia simply because one person suffers? Obviously, they're not allowed to do anything about the suffering, but if they leave Omelas, aren't they going out into the real world? Aren't they coming to Lubbock and Dallas and New York and San Francisco? And isn't there suffering there? Aren't there a lot more people suffering in other places than there are in this one place where there's only one child suffering? And of course, the child represents innocence and all that. There is a little bit of foreshadowing here, not real foreshadowing, but kind of a character, kind of a foil type connection between the little boy playing the flute, which the summer festival can't start until he finishes, and the little kid caught in the, not caught, but yeah, trapped in the closet in the basement room. So anyway, be sure to make that connection in your mind. But why would even a few people leave this town of peace and happiness knowing that there is more suffering out there? The only conclusion I can come to is out in the real world, they know they're suffering, but they can do something. They can help people. They can feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the prisoners, take care of the sick. They can do all those things to alleviate the suffering, which they are not allowed to do in Omelas. And so they would rather be in a world filled with suffering where they can help than in a town where there's just a very limited amount of suffering, but they're not allowed to help. Again, that's my personal interpretation. You may get a different one. And who knows, deconstruction, which allows for different interpretations, might be a good tool for understanding this. Deconstruction may give us 2 or 3 different interpretations, all of which are correct based on the reading, but they can have different interpretations that exist at the same time. Okay, good little stories. Hope you enjoyed them. Next week, we're doing Jury for Peers and the Jewelry. Again, really, really good short stories. I would encourage you to continue with the Elements of Formalism. Print out a form for each short story you read, 2 a week, and fill them in as you read them. It really will help you to understand it better. It'll help you to remember it better, and they're wonderful to study both for the quizzes and the final exam. If you have any questions, I hope you'll let me know. Drop me an email, jfly@southplainscollege.edu. You're doing a good job on your discussion posts, and I look forward to hearing more from you.